Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
7:06 on this Super Bowl Monday. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. Seattle won. There you go. That's all you need to know, really. 7:35, we'll speak with KNOX WILLIAMS, Executive Director of American Suppressor Association, because Virginia lawmakers are, imposing a $500 tax if you have a suppressor. 8:05, Virginia Delegate Wren Williams, who's gone viral with an exchange over some of these gun bills in Richmond. 8:35, Tim Burt, he's got a new book out about the Super Bowl ads. He'll review yesterday's offering. Yes, Larry O'Connor with Beverly Hallberg, political communications media guru. Good morning, Beverly.
Good morning.
Were you rooting for Seattle, or do you not care?
I was rooting for both teams to lose, so I knew my wish was not going to come true.
Yeah, I hope you didn't put money on that occasion.
No.
Joe diGenova is our guest, a legal analyst, former U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia. Did you have a dog in the fight there yesterday in this Super Bowl, Joe?
Well, our sons and daughter are Patriot fans from way back from living in Vermont, and they're basically the Tom Brady class. And while they root for him, they don't root for him the way they used to. But that was a horrible Super Bowl, and it was made worse by having the commissioner at the game. Goodell, the worst commissioner of any sport anywhere.
He is the absolute worst. Thank you. The only saving grace is he gets booed whenever he's seen, and yet the owners love him because I guess he makes them a lot of money, and that's all. Do you
know that in his contract with the NFL, his entire family, all his children, have health care in perpetuity. Health care insurance in perpetuity. This part of his contract is worth about $30 million.
Yeah, that's amazing. I can't believe they agreed to that. Well, listen, you can negotiate anything, I suppose. I need to find out who his agent is. Joe, we were talking about the maps, these redistricting maps that Virginia has released, and it's actually more corrupt than I expected. You really have to be shameless to be able to get away with this, and I think that's Republicans' problem. I sure hope they get over themselves and they approach this, if they really want to play this game, and act as shameless as Democrats are when they're redistricting. Will this pass judicial muster at this point, Virginia? It's going to a state referendum, but is there anything that can stop Democrats from doing this, short of the voters of Virginia saying no?
No, there's nothing that can stop it. When the Supreme Court refused to hear the case from California, which was an outrageous gerrymandering done for partisan political reasons, the court turned down that case, and it made it very clear that what it said in the past is these are political disputes that courts have no role in. They should stay out of this. And when the president started this, I don't know who around him thought this was going to be a good idea, but it wasn't a good idea. It isn't a good idea to have started this fight, and Republicans are going to lose the battle.
Well, again, if I can gently push back, I think it's a fine idea if you're willing to actually fight this. If you're going to play the game. Don't get into the game. It's like, okay, hey, I want to play football. Okay, here's your helmet, here's your pads. No. I don't need those. I'll just play football. Well, then you're going to get hurt, Larry, if you don't play with a helmet.
I couldn't agree more. I think your incantation of it is much better than mine. You're absolutely right. And that's exactly why I thought it was a bad idea, because I assume in my postulation that Republicans are never going to be they're never going to be as nasty and obnoxious and mendacious as Democrats. Once you begin with that, you don't start the fight. And it's pretty obvious when you look around the country about the way this is being done. There was no way the Republicans were going to win this fight. And so I think it was a stupid idea from the beginning. And too bad. I think the president made a big mistake.
Yeah.
And you've talked about it from a legal perspective. I'm curious what your thoughts are from a public perception. So as you were just saying, you were seeing this in California, Texas, more states are moving more towards these redistricting efforts. Does it get to a place where voters understand what's going on, they don't like it, or at least doesn't make sense, why all of a sudden are these districts just randomly drawn? Do you think that Republicans have made a big enough push, and of course it complicates it with Trump doing what he did, to try to push back and expose what's going on to the public?
Well, they're not going to be able to do that, mostly because they're incompetent, most Republicans around the country. And secondly, the media is not with them. The media is delighted to have democratically controlled state legislatures and congressional seats. And the media would love to see the president impeached. And if the House goes to the Democrats in the next election, I have no doubt that the president is going to be impeached. I doubt if he will ever be convicted in the Senate, even if the Democrats take control of the Senate. But the American people don't focus on stuff like this. They're focused, if you look on the polling, on affordability, the price of eggs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The president and his people have done a very bad job of selling the power of his big, beautiful bill and everything that it's doing. They've been focused on foreign policy, which is a noble effort and worthwhile and very important. I don't know if there's enough time to right the ship on having the American people think that things are good when they are, in fact, very, very good economically. Perhaps things will turn around, but right now it looks like the Republicans are going to lose the House and the Senate unless the president and his people figure out a way to message them back into the game. But if the redistricting effort is any example of Republican efforts, it's going to be a loser.
Yeah, unless the Supreme Court can come through with a timely decision here on the voter rights bill, the Louisiana decision. But time's running out on that, even if it comes out correctly, and it's going to be too late to redistrict for these midterms. Joe, the other thing that the president's team is focused on is the deportation policies, upwards to 3 million deportations in 2025, 2 million self-deportations, taking advantage of what's basically amnesty. You know, you fly, we'll give you a ticket to fly home and no questions asked, and here's a little money for your troubles, and then you can reapply. That's amnesty, frankly, because they're not being prosecuted. On Friday, the president's team got a great appeals court decision here having to do with the detention of illegal immigrants. Can you sort of unpack this and why this was even in question? It seems to me if you cross the border illegally and you are apprehended by immigration enforcement, you can be detained pending your deportation. How is that even controversial?
It's controversial because the Democrats have made every issue around a closed border an open border issue. And the courts at the district court level have been remarkably happy to accommodate the Democrats, but that didn't happen in this instance. The Court of Appeals ruled that the people who cross the border illegally, quite logically, can be detained because they don't have any right to be here. And then they're throwing them out of the country as adjudicated through the administrative courts. They're not federal courts. They don't require warrants or anything else to detain them. And it's common sense, and it's a very good ruling, and it should be very, very helpful on all these crazy claims of asylum and other things. Now, people can still make claims of asylum, but they're not going to succeed anymore because most of the claims of asylum over the last 5 years have been absolutely false.
Well, and while they wait for the hearing on asylum, they will be in a detention center as long as there are enough beds. I mean, the one thing that's going to sort of slow this down is building enough detention centers by the end of this year. Joe, if you can just expand on that idea a little bit, because you just made the distinction, which you do not hear often in the media, nearly enough, between an administrative court and a judicial court, because the Democrats, in trying to hold up funding for the Department of Homeland Security, are claiming that through this financial budget negotiation, they're trying to force every single one of these deportation cases into a judicial branch court versus an administrative court. Tell me how big that is and how rare it is for this sort of thing to be worked out based on a government shutdown sort of scenario.
Well, what the Democrats want to do is they want to basically eliminate what are called immigration courts. And immigration courts are basically hearing officers in the immigration service. They're not judges. They're not federal judges. They're called judges because they want to make the sense of adjudication sound reasonable and fair and everything. But basically, the judges work for the immigration service, and they are theoretically prone not to deny most of the requests to stay in the country, which is what they should do. What the Democrats want to do is make those administrative judges federal judges. They want to have all these cases heard by federal courts. Now, I can tell you that the federal judges sitting in U.S. district courts do not want all these immigration cases. But if the Democrats were to succeed, that would mean nobody ever gets deported.
That's
because
the key. Yeah.
The courts would be clogged, and you wouldn't be able to get these cases heard. And so what would happen is courts would intervene and say, oh, we can't leave these people locked up waiting for all these cases. That'll be years. So we're going to release them into the country. And that's exactly what the Democrats want, because they want them to be able to vote illegally.
Yeah, and but again, I just want to reiterate, they're doing this on a funding negotiation, like they're holding a gun to the head of the Republicans, saying upend immigration laws and these deportation courts or judgments, or else we'll have a government shutdown on DHS. I mean, it's absolutely outrageous.
It is, and the Republicans should say, fine, shut it down. If that's what you want,
right.
Shut it down. Now,
that's right.
That's an impossibility, because you cannot not have a border patrol, although the Democrats would love that. Their ultimate goal is an open border, and so that people can come in, and we're not able to figure out who can vote and who can't vote. I mean, when you go back and think about how this all started with Biden lying about his inability to enforce the laws around the border, it is an amazing picture of the naivete of the American people who allowed this nonsense to go on and finally got rid of Biden, although it wasn't Biden that they got rid of. It was his wonderful vice president, Miss Pablum mouth. I mean, it was just the theory that this could be believed by the American people, and yet still Americans have not risen up in anger about this. They love the closed border and all of that. But once you start fine-tuning, they lose their attention span.
Joe, we got to leave it there. Always good to talk to you. Have a great week.
You too.
It's 7:18. They used to call it gun control. Now they call it common sense gun safety bills, but it's all the same thing. It undermines your Second Amendment right. It rarely passes judicial muster in the Supreme Court. And Virginians always thought that they were immune to some of this stuff because Virginia, in some respects, leans a little bit more conservative. There was a time when Virginians wanting to win statewide, like Tim Kaine or Mark Warner, had to pretend like they were really conservative. In fact, I remember when Terry McAuliffe was running for governor, he used to talk about how he would take his kids out shooting and hunting, and he would drop his G's like any good son from Syracuse, Beverly. You know, he'd come down, I'd go hunting with my boys, he used to say. But now it seems like Democrats, mask off, and they're just fine undermining gun rights in the Commonwealth. Yeah. We're seeing it right now in Richmond. It's amazing how that worm turns, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, you have to add that common sense language in to try to justify what they're doing. But yeah, I've always loved the political ads where it's clear this person has never handled a gun, and yet they think it's going to help them win votes. Any gun owner can see right through it.
Well, Dan Helmer, this Fairfax Democrat who's in the House of Delegates, has single-handedly been pushing all of these things. He's obviously auditioning for higher office here by pushing the wokest left-wing Democrat anti-Second Amendment, anti-most constitutional amendment rights there on the floor of the House. And Virginia Delegate Wren Williams, who's joining us coming up in the program, he had an epic moment here in exchange with him in Richmond. Take a listen to this, cut 10.
I was wondering what exactly the law does say about when somebody can sell a grandfathered firearm.
Doug for Fairfax, Doug Helmer.
Mr. Speaker, the bill is clear on the transfer, sale, import, export of firearms and all of it, and I do encourage the delegate to read the full bill text. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, speaking to the bill.
Delegate has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, I did read the bill, and we got a problem because, Mr. Speaker, even though the patron did not answer how you could actually sell or transfer one of these grandfathered weapons, the bill does say how you can do it. It says that you can sell it to a firearms dealer or you can sell it to an out-of-state individual. Did you know that it is a federal felony for someone from the Commonwealth to sell a firearm to someone who doesn't live in the Commonwealth? Did you know that? Selling also, that can bring up to 5 years in federal prison. So that's not a good idea. And then this bill right here, this actually makes it a state crime to sell a firearm to a firearm dealer. It says you cannot transfer it to any person, and there is no exception to allowing a dealer to purchase a firearm from you.
That sounds like Mr. Helmer doesn't really know what's in the law that he's pushing and passing himself. Maybe he
someone did their homework and someone didn't.
Yes.
Clearly.
We're going to speak with Wren Williams about this coming up at it's 8:05, so stay tuned. It's 7:23. Coming up, we're going to speak with KNOX WILLIAMS from the American Suppressor Association, Democrats from Richmond, further undermining your Second Amendment rights. And now they want to make it pretty expensive to own a suppressor. That sounds unconstitutional. It is. Keep it here. It is 7:37. Good morning. Thanks for tuning in to O'Connor and Company. Barbara Britt doing news this morning. Beverly, Hallberg. John Matthews taking Super Bowl Monday off. And you know what that means? Shorter news reports. Means I got to get back to the microphone faster if I decide to stretch my legs, walk around a little bit. Thankfully, you're here to jump in if necessary.
Yes, very much so. Good morning.
Coming up, we're going to talk about all those Super Bowl ads at 8:35 with Tim Burt, advertising expert. Right now, we've got KNOX WILLIAMS, Executive Director of the American Suppressor Association. Mr. Williams, we've been trying to beat the drum here and talk about all of the unconstitutional bills that are coming out of Richmond right now, undermining Virginians' Second Amendment rights. But I feel like we're sort of speaking into the vortex here because it doesn't seem to be getting a whole lot of attention.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And thank you so much for having me on this morning.
You bet.
It's wild what's going on there, and it's a true reminder that elections have consequences that the voting electorate should remember.
Yeah, Democrats used to sort of be careful around these kind of laws because it was electoral poison for them. You know, Tim Kaine and Mark Warner, they pretended to be Second Amendment advocates and gun rights advocates. Terry McAuliffe, when he ran, talked about how he loved going out shooting and hunting. So what has changed in Virginia? Has it gotten that radically blue?
It seems like it has. From our perspective, it appears to be just a massive influx of anti-gun group money. Groups like the Bloombergs and his Everytown network have put just a tremendous amount of dollars into not just Virginia, but kind of the progressive ecosystem across the country. And it's really just come out of the woodworks.
As Executive Director of the American Suppressor Association, you're certainly looking specifically at this $500 tax on suppressors. I thought at the federal level they just eliminated these kind of unconstitutional fees.
Yes, sir, that's correct. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act did just eliminate a 91-year-old tax. So since 1934, the federal government imposed a $200 tax on these hearing protection devices. And here, Karen Keys-Gamarra introduced legislation, House Bill 207, that's seeking to add a $500 punitive, unconstitutional tax that is really just going to disproportionately impact the working class trying to exercise their constitutional rights in the state of Virginia, the Commonwealth.
Mm-hmm.
And Knox, I'm not an expert on how much suppressors cost, but $500 seems like a steep price. This seems like an arbitrary number and really something that they're using to just try to price people out of being able to buy suppressors altogether. Is that what you're seeing this as?
Oh, absolutely. There's tons of suppressors that are available that cost less than $500. And again, this would be akin to putting a $500 tax on, say, a seatbelt, right? Another safety device, something that protects one of our five senses, that is a constitutionally protected item, right? It's truly ludicrous that they would say with a straight face that this would have any sort of an impact on public safety. It won't. What it will do is price out folks that cannot afford it. Frankly, folks that can't afford that $500 tax will not be able to afford hearing aids, which is something that they'll likely need if they shoot without proper hearing protection.
So the only way this gets stopped, it appears, is that Democrats fear political repercussions for doing so, and they don't seem to have any such fears, or the Supreme Court could step in. What do you think the prospects are here, Mr. Williams?
I think it's highly likely that not just for this issue, but for myriad issues related to guns, there's going to be a lot of new lawsuits working their way through both the state and federal court systems.
Yeah. There's also this move to do a so-called assault weapons ban. I still can't quite get anybody to define what an assault weapon is, because I'm pretty sure any gun can be used for an assault. But what's the disposition of that bill?
Right, it's another classic hardware ban, right? Any feature of any gun that in any way, shape, or form is ergonomic or functional somehow triggers this, like you said, arbitrary definition of a firearm. At the end of the day, the goal is clear: ban guns and confiscate them, right? They love to say things like, buyback programs. Well, the government can't buy anything back that it never owned in the first place.
Yeah.
The end game is a state where only the government has guns and the citizenry does not, and that's just not a world that I would like to live in.
And, of course, there's been a move across the country to try to limit people's rights to gun ownership. But seeing this in Virginia is a newer thing. I think of Virginia as a gun-loving state. I'm curious what the response has been as we've seen numerous pushes to try to limit safe gun ownership. What are you hearing from people in Virginia? And do you think that enough people are going to be speaking up, speaking to their members or their delegates there to try to push back on this?
I certainly hope so. And that's the one thing that we can do as citizens is contact your lawmakers. Let them know that you do not approve of legislation like this. The fact of the matter is, Republicans, they don't have the votes. It needs to come from within the Democratic caucus. And I'm just not sure that they feel the pressure right now. The good news is we'll have another election cycle here coming up in less than 2 years in Virginia, and that's when people really need to make their voices heard.
You mentioned the Bloomberg money, the Everytown money, the Moms Demand money. Where's the pro-Second Amendment money? Where's the Liberty, Freedom, Constitution money that used to be quite effective in these battles?
It's still there. There's still a lot of groups that are working behind the scenes and really pushing the Second Amendment issue and trying to champion it. It's just one of those cases right now in Virginia where, I hate to be pessimistic, but the votes simply just aren't there, at least not on this particular issue. That's something that we need to do a lot of work to try and fix between now and the next election cycle. But, as it stands, basically, whatever the Democrats want, the Democrats are going to get. And I wish that was not the case, but practically speaking, that's where we are.
And they want to infringe on your Second Amendment rights, and they're going to get it. So time to win some elections, Virginia. KNOX WILLIAMS, American Suppressor Association, suppressor.org, by the way. That's a good URL. Thanks, Knox. Good talking with you.
Thank you all so much.
It's 7:43.
WMAL.
Not a bad start for the U.S. in the Olympics there in Milan, as they've already racked up 2 gold medals. That leads all the other nations in golds. However, in the total medal count, it's Norway. Oh, excuse me, they don't lead in gold. Norway has 3 golds. U.S. has 2. Norway also has the most golds. Norway usually does well. After all, it's Norway.
There's a lot of climate change going on there. Exactly. A lot of warm pushing cold their way.
But Beverly, some of the key events the U.S. is doing very well in, including figure skating, where they have won the team gold, which was pretty dramatic as they edged out Japan there when it all came down to the men's freestyle skate. So skating is going to be pretty exciting with this guy, Ilya Malinin. Is that how you pronounce it? Yeah.
Malina.
He looked pretty great, I got to say, in the clips that I saw. But my big sport that I like watching, I like to, so here's the thing about Winter Olympics: you watch sports that you don't usually watch.
Right.
So the 2 ones that I like the most during the winter is luge and curling, because you only watch it every 4 years. And mixed curling team, the U.S. is on a track to win the gold medal. They've been kicking butt, and they beat Canada. I mean, when we can beat Canada in curling, it's over for Canada. They should just give up.
It's one of those sports where I know none of the rules, but I can tell when somebody does it well. And that just makes you feel good. And I have zero investment in curling through 4 years, and then all of a sudden I'm very, very invested in curling. And it makes me feel like it's the one sport I could still do. The Olympic
totally.
sport.
I think we could come up with our own mixed team and basically compete it at the world level. It's like shuffleboard on ice is what it is.
Yeah.
When I was a kid growing up in Detroit, we would get a Canadian television station because it was so close to Canada, and we would watch curling. It's the thing. They love curling in Canada, and now we're beating them. It's hilarious. Also in alpine skiing, which is sort of a high-profile event, we've won the gold with Breezy Johnson won the women's downhill. Breezy Johnson is her name. But sadly, Lindsey Vonn had a career-ending injury there. She was one of the great feel-good stories that she was coming back for one last Olympics, and devastating wipeout there.
Oh, it was
the mountain
horrific.
Yeah.
Not that I encourage anybody to listen to this, but there are sounds of her screaming in agony as it took 10 minutes to get her off. Really, really terrible. But Breezy Johnson won right after that happened. Yeah. So really, really interesting, but obviously terrible for Lindsey Vonn.
And naturally, there's politics at the Olympics as reporters, try to ask the athletes at press conferences to comment on American politics. And sadly, many of the athletes are more than willing to do so. Here's freestyle skiers trashing ice and their own country. Listen.
I feel heartbroken about what's happened in the United States when, I'm pretty sure you're referencing ice and some of the protests and things like that. I think that as a country, we need to focus on respecting everybody's rights and making sure that we're treating our citizens as well as anybody with love and respect. And I hope that when people look at athletes compete in the Olympics, they realize that that's the America that we're trying to represent.
It brings up mixed emotions to represent the U.S. right now, I think. It's a little hard. There's obviously a lot going on that I'm not the biggest fan of, and I think a lot of people aren't.
Yeah, okay, fine. Then go defect and represent another country. I never quite understood this. That first voice you heard was Chris Lillis, and then the next guy was Hunter Hess. They're freestyle skiers, and I don't know, after that I'm rooting for the mountain.
Exactly. And I was thinking about this in this posturing of I need to share my opinions on what's going on in the political space. Nobody expects you to agree with every decision a president makes. It's similar to being in the military. You have a commander-in-chief. It doesn't mean that by serving in the military, you're going to agree with every decision. So I find it a very arrogant thing that they think they need to share their opinions when you're competing against somebody from the country of China who's dealing with so many things. Do we hear the Chinese speak out against it? No, because we know what would happen to them if they did.
Well, exactly. I mean, I love the fact that these guys are free to speak out if they wish to speak out. I just wish that when asked by a reporter to chime into politics, they would say, you know what, I'm here. It's the Olympics. It's the honor of a lifetime. I'm here to compete for my country and do the best I can, and I'm just focused on that. But apparently they're not. They're not focused on that. It's 7:54. Coming up, the Democrats' war on your Second Amendment rights continues, and we've got at least one Virginia Republican pushing back. Wren Williams will be our guest next.